Alright, here's the story. So Photoshooty, the owner of the Tengu Plant Discord, sent me a message asking me to participate in the Tengu Rumble tournament. This is a tournament where you have 72 hours to play out your rounds, so you don't have to show up and play in a single day. It kind of gives you a little leverage on how you want to play the game. I reluctantly agreed, but I asked for more time, and Photoshooty, of course, responded with no. So I got to thinking, what deck do I want to play? Well, if you know anything about me, you know that I like to fight for the underdog. And as much as I love Photoshooty, I have to say he is completely incapable of making a correct tier list in the Tengu Plant Discord. So for this reason, I felt I needed to bring Karakuri to the table so I could boost it up in the ranks and make it a tier 1 deck in the Discord. So this is the build that I brought to the table. There are two main weaknesses of Karakuri, and I wanted to solve them immediately. The first weakness is Thunder King. If your opponent summons a Thunder King turn 1, it can absolutely wall this deck off. But I wanted to remove that weakness entirely, which is why I decided to run 12 main deck outs to Thunder King. We have the 2 Cyber Dragon, we have Hypa, we have 3 Karakuri Soldier Nisamu, which can crash into Thunder King and get you the Hypa to out the Thunder King. We have Dark Hole, we have Book of Moon, we have Mind Control, we have triple Smashing Ground. I refuse to lose to that card, and you will see the irony of that later. That being said, the other main weakness of Karakuri is Cyber Dragon. People will typically side this in against you in game 2s and 3 to contact fuse into Chimera Tech with your machine type synchro monsters, which will make you sometimes reluctant to go into them. My solution to this was to side triple Chaos Trap Hole. I've already been a fan of this card in the format in general because I think it's really strong against most of the meta decks, because a lot of them use Light and Darks to begin with, but the fact that you can use this to negate and banish a Cyber Dragon so it can't be Monster Reborn is extremely ideal for what you're trying to do. This protects your boards super nicely, and also is just in general against a lot of decks an extra copy of Solemn Warning that removes the monster so it doesn't give fodder for BLS or Chaos Sork. That being said, this is the list that I brought. I wanted to see how far I could take it. Didn't have a lot of time to put it together, but without further ado, let's take a look at how these games went. For round 1, I was against Piper Chaos. The trick to beating Piper Chaos is I feel like you have to kind of play slow to avoid getting blown out by Tragodia or Gores, which is why I wanted to try to put my focus around making Landois in this matchup, as well as going into game 2 and 3, siding into cards like Chaos Trap Hole so I could potentially just win the game through turning off my opponent's resources in the graveyard. So game 1, I start by losing the die roll, which honestly is a recurring theme throughout this entire tournament. I don't think I won a single one of these rock, paper, scissors, which feels pretty bad. But my opponent just kind of passes their turn, and so I get to just search and swing in for 500. I didn't really care if he dropped Gores because I had the Smashing Ground. He then decides to make a Stardust Dragon, and I have a warning for it. I then wanted to try to combo off, but since I got Book of Moon, we just decided to swing in and get as much damage as we can, assuming there's nothing else to really punish me. They go into Piper, which gets them Ryo, but it's a bit too late. They have to Chaos Sork, banish my Quick, and then go for a Synchro play, which is going to blow up my board, but I do get draws off of it, so it's kind of okay. Special summon the Cyber Dragon to out the card, the Arcanite, and then we just go for combo from here. I decided to go for the draw 2 combo because I have a My Body in hand, so this gives me that safety. This is why I really like Hypa, because you can attack with Hypa and then it'll change its battle position so you get the draw 2, so you don't have to go into Merchant. Unfortunately, I'm punished by the Battle Fader here. He then just kind of passes with nothing to do, so on the next attack, I don't get to end the game, but I do get the draw 2 off of the Hypa switch, which gets me Warning and Judgment, so that's pretty much just game right there. It was kind of a crazy draw. Going into game 2, we're going second again, of course. He gets the Piper draw 2 right out the gate, which feels pretty bad, but I have a potential combo. I'm not sure why I didn't Randy Space, but we hit the Chaos Trap Hole here. He goes for a Duality. He goes Chaos Sork. He sets a card. I end phase, see the Yada, so I feel a bit safe and not Randy spacing now. He tributes for Caius. I have the Warning, which feels really good. But unfortunately, there's a follow-up Chaos Sork, which I just did not have the tools to deal with. I unfortunately draw the Veiler just a turn too late, and now the pressure is on, and I don't think I can really come back from this. Yeah, I ripped the smashing, but he puts me into top decking, and we go into game 3. Game 3, I had an awkward hand, but since I had 2 spells, I decided to just slam a Landoise, especially with Monster Reborn. He had the Dark Hole to immediately out. I have Veiler for the tour guide, and then I have Monster Reborn to just bring back the Landoise in addition to space. I decided to space here, knowing that he runs Legacy of Yada, mostly because I could not risk it being warning, and I got rewarded for my gamble. Even if I got punished and gave him a +1 off of a Legacy of Yada, it's worth it just to ensure that this Landoise goes through, because I really need to be able to negate his effects through of like Caius, Tour Guide, or whatever, and the Smashing Ground is perfect fodder for that. I get Max Seed on the Reborn, but I don't really care about that. We attack over the global, we set a card. We now have Debunk for if he has Tragodia or Gores, so I'm feeling very, very safe now. I decided to go in on another play, just make a Naturia Beast, so now I've turned off his spells and his monster effects, which feels really good. The Debunk ends up closing out the game for round 1, giving me a 2-1 victory moving into round 2. Round 2, I was up against I guess remove brainwashing. I don't really know what to call this deck. I guess Owner Seal would be another word for it. The whole goal of this deck is to use cards like Lava Golem to tribute my own monsters and then steal them back to have just big beaters while also outing my boards. I knew going into it what this list was because I actually know the person playing it, and he sent me the list prior to going in, so I had to of course send him mine. But in response to this, I kind of realized that the best way to beat this deck, due to its weakness of having monsters that burn you when you take them back, is you just want to dish out as much damage as quickly as possible, which I feel like Karakuri's can do extremely well. So I decided to just play as aggressive as I possibly could to try to burn him down, so when he tries to take back his Lava Golems, it actually punishes him way more than it punishes me to lose my monsters. I guess I was wrong. I did actually win a die roll, and it was for this match here. I start off by normal summoning Neutron. I realized I forgot to search in the end phase. This was taking place on a different day, so I was super tired. I set a heavy trying to blow him out, and unfortunately I get Randy spaced. I decided to try to go for the combo here. Again, I'm just trying to like push through and do as much damage as humanly possible. He unfortunately has a warning, but I feel safe to do this because I have my body as a shield in my hand, which means if he has Torrential, I don't lose. I of course just get Lava Golemed immediately. He goes to set 2 cards. I decide to just normal summon Merchant and attack directly with Lava Golem, knowing if he has anything on in response to my attack, I can just Judgment, which will just win me the game, which it does. So then we go into game 2. He starts with the Cyber Valley. I find this kind of funny. He forgot to drop return, so I reminded him, but he Fiendish Chains my Komoichi, which just lets me just synchro and then get another Komoichi. So I make Beret. I can just kind of smash and ground the Cyber Valley and then attack directly here. And he can't really Gores me or anything because he has Fiendish Chain. I don't even remember if he played Gores, but I can just do a ton of damage, and then I'm going to change this to defense and draw a card. Even if I get Lava Golemed here, like, it's not that big of a deal because now I just feel like his win con is completely turned off. Like, if he wants to steal my monster, he just gets burned. So in this situation, I end up just going into a Avarice, so I'm still like doing really well on card advantage and of course life points. And the drawing this Royal Decree kind of just guarantees me there's a potential for game. He has Battle Fader, I have Decree, he Randy spaces it, he Owner Seals and attacks over my monster. Now in this position, I'm sitting there thinking that I can just Dark Hole and normal summon a monster and attack for game, but I also could have just passed because his Lava Golem's going to burn him for game anyway, and yeah, his last card was Owner Seal, so there's just no way we were losing that match. Alright, so round 3, I was against... yeah, you're not going to believe this, but I was against Archfiends. Now, I was against my boy Richard. Richard's a good friend of mine, and honestly, the fact that he was already like undefeated with Archfiends at this point in the game was absolutely crazy. So I go against him, and honestly, the biggest thing Archfiends do is they have a equip spell that is basically a Snatch Steal while they control Archfiend monster. That's kind of the biggest gimmick. They also kind of rely on playing a Chaos strategy. I know this because I actually low-key kind of helped Richard make his list. It all spawns from a clip that I'll show right now. Damn it, Richard. Now I have to build Archfiends and make them win just to make you eat those words. I'll find it. You think I can't?
Watch me.
I ended up concocting a rough draft of a list and sending it over to Richard, and, you know, unbeknownst to me, he actually intended on playing this Archfiend list. He definitely made some changes, made it his own, of course, naturally, but yeah, I unfortunately inspired this monstrosity you are about to see. And so after that happened, I decided that, you know, I had a relative idea of how this deck was going to play. The best thing I could do was utilize my 3 MST in main deck to try to deny those Snatch Steals as they come, but also to, you know, try to side in the Chaos Trap holes and, you know, deal with the Chaos strategy as best I can, turning off normal summons, which ideally will let me play the game, hopefully not making too big of boards that can just easily be outed with a single Snatch Steal. So of course, going into this game, we lose the die roll naturally, you know, a recurring theme, as I said. Richard starts with a Hidden Armory and then normal summons Thunder King, and unfortunately, what we realized is you cannot normal summon the turn you activate the card. So because of this and how drastically it changed my play, because I ended up just like summoning Nisamu and like attacking in and crashing, but I think in other circumstances, if this Thunder King wasn't summoned, I would have just set this card, but the information of that is like really game breaking. Richard ends up just kind of scooping. I don't really know how I feel about it. I didn't really like enjoy that was the result that happened. So we go to game 2, and you know, we get to side in the Chaos Trap holes, get some options. Going second again, he leads with a Duality into Archfiend Soldier, and just kind of passes. So I decided to try to go off. I make Landois. I have 3 spells in hand, which means I can't get Gorz here. He spaces my Judgment, normal summons, activates Falling Down. I have the MST for it. And then he has Book of Moon to out my Landois. I luckily draw into Nisamu, which is going to like start kind of stalling for me. I just decided to go into another one. I Smashing Ground the Thunder King, and then since I don't have Hypa, I had to kind of wait. The Smashing Ground actually saved me so much here because it gave me time to stall and get my 3rd Nisamu out of deck and then activate the Avarice so I could get Hypa back in and out the Thunder King yet again. So we attack over. He goes for a Veiler, which was just kind of a misplay because, you know, it doesn't stop my Nisamu from resolving. So I get to swing over, get the Hypa. Main phase 2, I normal summon, go into Beret, get another card. He summons Tour Guide. I have Chaos Trap Hole, and then he sets another card. And we just kind of start going off here. I have the My Body, so I'm not afraid of Mirror Force or Torrential at this point, which means that, you know, I can kind of just dish in and do as much damage as humanly possible. He goes for another Tour Guide, and I have a Solemn Warning. So that wraps up the game in a swift 2-0. For round 4, I was up against Tengu Plants. Now, this match actually made me pretty sad because, in all honesty, I really struggled in this matchup, even though I tested against Tengu Plants a lot prior to this, and I just had no difficulty whatsoever going through the matchup. So I feel like I got kind of unlucky in this match, but we'll watch it together and kind of see what happens. The reality of how to beat Tengu Plants is side in your Max Cs to prevent them from making their extensions. I also really like having the access to my triple Thunder King inside and Chaos Trap holes to prevent them from using their Cyber Dragons or going into any other synchros. The 2 synchros that Tengu Plants typically go into are Librarian and Catastor, both of which are dark, so Chaos Trap Hole deals with them. So I felt like I really had the tools to deal with this matchup, and then, you know, we'll see the results kind of just speak for themselves. All right, so naturally, we lost the die roll again. You know, gotta keep the trend going. And I opened a hand of literally all spells. Like, luckily, I'm able to out the Thunder King, and honestly, here, I think I made a mistake. I searched Kamoichi, but the reality is by searching this Kamoichi, I'm thinking that, hey, I kind of want to look to make a Synchro Summon on my next turn, but the fact that I don't have other monsters means I really probably should have got Nisamu so I could, like, you know, kind of float around until I see something better, because this really limits my plays and almost forces me to go into Naturia Beast, which, you know, isn't necessarily the best play against Tengu Plants because they have a lot of main deck outs to Naturia Beast. So I end up swinging in for 500. I set a couple back rows. We get my warning my Book of Moon Randy spaced. He goes for Foolish Burial into Dandy, trying to trish me here, which luckily I have the Solemn Warning. Otherwise, this could have been very bad. We normal summon, go into Naturia Beast here, and this is what I was talking about. If I would have had the Nisamu, I could have just cleared both of these tokens, and I feel like I'm in just a much better spot. This Naturia Beast doesn't actually do anything for me, especially against Tengu Plants. He set a monster. I had no idea what it was, but I felt like it was safe to like instead of like hitting that and giving him like a tuner if it's like a Sankin, I felt like it was better to just clear the token so he doesn't have anything to synchro with. But unfortunately, it was a set Tengu, so he goes for a synchro for 5 into Librarian. I have my body as a shield set, which feels pretty bad. My hope was that he would go into like a Catastor, but he goes Stardust, which is why this just feels really, really bad. So given that I have Smashing Ground in hand, it makes this like almost impossible. All I have is a Cyber Dragon into Brionac play, which is Desperation. I obviously just get wiped right there. Going into game 2, I get to go first. I'm pretty stoked about this. I have Thunder King and Chaos Trap Hole, which just feels like an insane opener. He goes for a Thunder King to ram, and I Chaos Trap Hole it and banish it. So I get to swing in for 19. I set a warning. He had to set Heavy Storm, which is unfortunate, and then he has Mind Control for my Thunder King. I max C here just to get the draw to hopefully get something to make with my Komoichi. I then am able to Mind Control and go into Beredo, which gets Veilered, and that is also very unfortunate. He then has the Cyber Dragon, which is just like super unlucky because I really need this Beredo to at least stick like one turn. He then makes Chimera Tech, and I'm forced to Veiler it just so I don't take the 2k and it'll stay at 0, so I can just out it with my Thunder King on the next turn. He then normal summons Sangan, which is perfect because I have Thunder King. So I normal Thunder King, attack over the Sangan, and then I pass. He then normal summons Tour Guide. I have the Veiler. I'm feeling really good at this point, and then he had exactly Call the Haunted for his Cyber Dragon, which felt really, really bad because he has a live Glow-Up Bulb in his graveyard. So that means that he can just make Trishula and burn my Smashing Ground, because I was kind of thinking I could just smash whatever he summons, but now I'm in this like weird position where I'm just top decking into a Trishula. And even then, I still don't think I lost this game because I draw into a Merchant. The Merchant lets me attack over the Fortress, and I just leave this in defense. He had to draw exactly Thunder King so I could like he could win the game here, because this is going to switch to defense. He basically needed anything above 1600, so I was really, really sad that he also just ripped Thunder King off that top, because I could have just normal summoned set the Nisamu. I could have stalled out, and then that's where I can make synchro plays and deal with this board. Like if he attacks into Nisamu, then I can get a Komoichi, normal summon Merchant, get an additional normal summon, make Catastor, and out this. Unfortunately, Thunder King was just like the perfect draw right there, so I take the game. It's unfortunate, but also this was undefeated like going into top cut, so whether I won or lost, I automatically make it into top 4. So in other words, we got top 4, baby. For top 4, I was going against Monarchs, which honestly I feel really good about this matchup, mostly because of the fact that I already main deck triple Veiler. This is why I'm a huge advocate for maining triple Veiler over like multiple copies of Maxx C. I do 3-in-1 because of the fact that having Veiler is just really, really nice against Monarchs, and the fact that the best one is Caius, and I side triple Chaos Trap Hole, and he's also on cards like Light and Darkness Dragon, means that going into this matchup, I feel like as long as I can just stop him from making his plays using cards like Quick to punish the left Treeborn Frog on the board to make synchro plays, and using cards like even Landoise to win the matchup, makes me feel pretty confident going into this match, but we'll see how it goes. Hey look, an idiot lost the die roll. Anyway, we're going second into Monarchs. It's not really a huge deal. I mean, that best case scenario, they just set up like a Treeborn Frog. We see here dualities for a Caius and then passes, so that's a really good sign. We're not seeing any Treeborns. I searched for another Komoichi. Maybe in hindsight that wasn't the best idea. I don't really know. I mean, Komoichi's just a big playmaker. I could have gone Watchdog to go for an 8, assuming he had nothing, but I just didn't assume he had nothing. We go into Landoise, but I realized that I actually trolled. You can't make Landoise with Neutron because it's a light. Luckily, I had people spectating the match, so they kind of called me out and called. I was like, oh shit, that's my bad. So we go into Beret. He Maxx Cs. It's fine because I'm just going to stop here anyway. I swing in for 14. He drops Trag. I warning the Trag because I do not want to get blown out by that card. In main phase 2, I Randy Space. I just figured I wanted to get as much value from as possible, and I kind of just read it was an enemy controller anyway. So I want to just kind of remove that from play, and then he changes me to defense, but I can just use Beret's effect to just change him back, so nothing really done there. We get Monster Reborn into Dark Dust Spirit, which is kind of crazy, so I was able to Veiler that, which is fine, and then I have the Komoichi for another play, so go into Landois this time, and I have 2 spells, and this is where you have to have all the restraint in the world if you're a player like me. You know how badly I wanted to slam this Pot of Avarice with 5 cards in grave? It was very tempting, but knowing the position he's in with no Treeborn Frog in his graveyard, it's actually way better to hold the spell and just have this as an effect negator, because I'm just preventing any chance of him being able to make a play. So we swing in, we get Veilered, and I just use my smashing to negate it. I have game here, and I'm like, no way does he have enough. So we swing in, he goes for another Trag, and I had the Avarice in hand. So we make it to game 2. Game 2, going second again. Open kind of a jank hand versus this deck. Most of these cards are pretty dead. My goal is really to try to get a Landois going as quickly as possible. Luckily, he tributes for Vanity's Fiend. I was actually so worried about Caius. I'm like, I just get blown out. I have the Book of Moon for the Vanity's Fiend, which is fine. And then I'm able to make Kamoichi. I do this play, I get Veilered, which is really unfortunate because I was actually going to go for a Quick, and then Quick was going to get me a Landois. So I really wanted to get that Landois online. In hindsight, I could have just slammed the Landois, but you know, I was worried about things like this, like enemy controller or even soul exchange. So I didn't want to just like go for like use all my resources on the one card. So unlucky as Veiler, but then he goes for Light and Darkness Dragons, and I just really don't have the tools to out it here. We smash and then normal neutron, so he's forced to crash, which I felt like was best case scenario. And then he goes into Formula. So I have a lot of cards I can draw at this point. Hypo was not one of them that I really wanted, but it's fine. Like, he goes into standby, he doesn't, and decides not to bring back Treeborn Frog so he can duality. And then at this point, I'm just starting to swing in with Hypa. I'm like, if he has Gores, I can Dark Hole. It's totally fine. And then he eventually takes Dark Hole, which puts me in this really weird spot. And so I normal summon the Merchant, but I was like, I can get Dark Hold here, so I was like, I'm just gonna swing in and do as much damage as I can and kind of sit on this board, because I didn't want to just get Dark Hold, which unfortunately I get hard punished here because I get hit with a Cyber Dragon. In hindsight, maybe I should have just gone for a Synchro play for bigger damage on that last turn, but then we have the Dark Hole, and unfortunately he had the Gores, so you didn't get to see him reveal the Gores, but yeah, he dropped Gores there, which means there's no way I could win. So yeah, so I start out with the awkward play. I set Watchdog and he just passes, so then I'm able to go to Barredo, and then I use Barredo to get Strategist, which lets me draw a card. I have double warning Veiler, which is like ideal versus Monarchs. He special Cyber Dragon. I have the warning, which feels really great. And then he goes into Vanity's Fiend, and this is where I actually get so punished, because I forgot I had Heavy Storm in my side deck, or in my main deck, and I actually was missing. I sided out one of my Smashing Grounds, so this Heavy Storm should have been Smashing Ground if I was smart, because I sided out all my MSTs. If I would have realized this was in there, I would have taken it out for the third Smashing. So this should have been an out to Vanity's Fiend, and I was really terrified because I didn't actually have a way to out this outside of Smashing Ground or Dark Hole. So this was just a huge costly mistake on my part. I set the Heavy Storm as a bluff, trying to get him to use his. I go to main phase 2 and then summon Merchant just so I can stall and hopefully draw the Smashing eventually, because I can do this up to 3 times. Luckily, I rip the Smashing and go into Merchant. Merchant searches me Kamoichi. I swing for 500. I'm not really afraid of Gores here again, just because of the fact that it's not very much damage. He ends up discarding for hand size. I Monster Reborn after he Veiler and then switch my Merchant to defense to get a draw. Just trying to maximize the value as possible, and then I figured I can just make Nat Beast, which is really good, because outside of him having a way to tribute, I'm fine. And in this scenario, I have Chaos Trap Hole, and he doesn't have Treeborn Frog online, so I'm like, if I just set Chaos Trap Hole for the Caius, I also have Veiler if I need it. That's gonna be the best play here. So he ends up tributing for Ryza, which is actually like worst case scenario for me. I have the Veiler, which is fine, but it does mean he gets to out the Naturia Beast. And then he does kind of make a big mistake. He just slams Monster Reborn. I think this is like a common misplay people do. If you have like an initial plan, then you have like a backup plan. And so he was kind of thinking like, oh, well, if this gets Veilered and interrupted, I can just Monster Reborn and go for a level 7 play. But he really needed to do that after attacking over Naturia Beast. So he activated Monster Reborn, and then I just activated Naturia Beast, and that was very unfortunate for him. He's still able to attack over my Naturia Beast, but you know, I could have got Black Rose there, which was much worse. I swing in for 18 and then go to end phase, search a Kamoichi. This means I can start looking for Landois here again, or maybe not Landois, but yeah, actually Landois. So we swing in for summon the Landois, and then just attack for game. He unfortunately bricked really hard in game 3 with like all these tribute summon monsters, but that's kind of the bane of Monarchs. That's why I feel like the deck is a bit inconsistent, because sometimes you just draw nuts and it feels incredible, but a lot of times you can just clog on your tributes. Like, you have to have a perfect balance between frogs and tributes to make this deck function. So yeah, bit unfortunate for him, but you know, hey, we made it into the finals. So we made it all the way to grand finals. The journey has been wild, and I have played against some very weird stuff to get here. But I don't want to reveal what I played against in finals just yet. This deck has loomed over me, and I would have never considered that this would be what I'm facing. But we'll just hop right into that game, and you guys can experience this for yourself. Alright guys, here it is. Somehow, against all odds, Richard managed to only lose to me and come in to face me in grand finals with Archfiends. How this is possible, I don't know. But it's what it is. We're going into this game. I'm really excited about it. You know, either way, it's interesting. It's interesting what happens. We start with the rock, paper, scissors. You know, I'm just going to show you, you know, this play out, you know. We, of course, go into the game, and I just, you know, eventually just lose the rock, paper, scissors. I swear to God, guys, I hate rock. I just wish they just do a die roll, man. It's so much better. It drives me nuts, you know. I don't even know. So we go second, you know, and you know, normally not a big deal, but he starts out with Thunder King, and unfortunately, as you can notice, I do have 12 main deck outs to Thunder King, as I said, and I unfortunately do not have a single one of them in my opening hand, but no worries, you know, I'll probably eventually draw one, right? So we draw into the Merchant, which is very unfortunate. I Randy space the back row, set a warning, and I just kind of pass. He attacks me directly, that's fine. All I'm trying to do is get to a point where I can out that Thunder King, and we draw into Baylor, which of course does not out the Thunder King, but it deals with this tour guide. So we eat another 2,900, and you know, all we're waiting for is just any card to out the Thunder King so we can play the game. We draw an MST, which of course is not going to do the job, so we set the Merchant. He attacks incorrectly here and swings over my Merchant and takes some damage. So we're still stalling quite nicely. We're still behind, but hey, any point we just draw that out, we're doing fine. And of course we draw Baylor and just scoop. Really unfortunate game 1. I think this is the only time in this entire series where I feel like I lost because I lost the die roll or didn't get to go first. And so our opening hand in game 2 is a little underwhelming. I mean, we have Chaos Trap Hole, which feels kind of good, but it gets Randy spaced anyway. He normal summons Thunder King. Luckily, we have one of our 12 outs in hand this time, so we're able to smash and then go into Naturia Beast. So what's interesting is I make Naturia Beast. He has a Mirror Force set, and he just doesn't use it. And then he goes on to make the same mistake my opponent in top 4 did, which is after he just like slams a Monster Reborn. But like I said, I guess I didn't attack in the after I summoned Naturia Beast. I wanted to take some time to like kind of protect it. But yeah, he has a Mirror Force set, and he just like doesn't end up using it. He sets a monster, and I just attack, and he could have used it. He chose not to. So I was really curious about why this happened, because I just kind of poke in with the Naturia Beast, and I feel like if he just outs it, he's like not in the best spot. So eventually he Call of the Hunted back Thunder King and attacks over my Nasamu. Nasamu summons, and I just get another one because that's like probably the most versatile thing to do at this point. And with this in hand, I'm like, okay, I can easily combo off, or at least make Scrap Dragon to out Gores if he has it. So I just decide to Heavy Storm. He Book of Moons, and I mill to negate. Again, really confused why that Mirror Force just wasn't used at any point. But we have Exact Game on board, so we attack, and luckily there was no Gores, so we were able to just win right there. So going into game 3, he starts off with a Hidden Armory into Falling Down, so I know he probably has some type of play. And so my guess is if I just normal summon this Thunder King, he's going to be forced to like Tour Guide, and he'll probably do some like damage to me. I can technically warning the Tour Guide, so if it goes through, worst case if he spaces it, I have a play. But I decided to normal summon Thunder King, and he spaces, and I'm like, okay, I can just attack over and get my Thunder King back, so that's probably best case scenario, which is what I do. So I end up taking a lot of damage here, but I figured it was fine because, you know, we have like debunk, we have some tools. So we normal summon the Nasamu, we crash in, The falling down goes away. We get the Thunder King back. We attack over the tour guide in battle phase, and he has Tragonia. This is unfortunate. I was like really hoping he wouldn't have this, but to play around him stealing my Thunder King back with Tragonia, because he does run a lot of level 4s, I figured best play was to make Utopia, and then I just kind of had to pray he didn't have another falling down and Archfiend monster, which since he tour guided for the first one, I felt like that was pretty unlikely. He then goes Heavy Storm, normal summons, and has the falling down and the Archfiend monster, which is unfortunately just game. So, you know, we just kind of had a bit of an anticlimactic ending, but, you know, overall, as sad as I was to take second, I have to say that I'm genuinely really proud of how this deck performed, you know, for throwing it together in 5 minutes, losing almost every die roll in the entire tournament. Taking a second place feels really good to me, and honestly, like, you know, congrats to Richard. You know, he went for something off meta, he did something kind of spicy, and it ended up working out for him in the end. So I feel like that was really cool, and really good on him for, you know, being innovative and taking a deck. And hey, you know, he said find a winning Archfiend list, and he made it. You know, at the end of the day, he proved himself wrong. So either way, it's good. But one thing that we really do need to talk about is, even after taking second place in this tournament with, you know, losing every die roll or whatever, Photoshooty still will not acknowledge this deck as a competitive deck, which means, guys, you need to join the Tengu Plant Discord, and you need to go in there and you need to flame him. You need to tell him that Karakuri's deserve that spot on that competitive list, because quite frankly, the deck performed well. It performed really nicely, and I was completely happy with it. Had I not got walled off by Thunder King in game 1, I think there was actually a game to be played, or a match to be played, and you know, we did end up beating this deck earlier in the tournament. So, you know, not to take away from Richard's win at all, you know, congratulations to him. But at the end of the day, Photoshooty needs to acknowledge Karakuri. So I need you guys to support me in my endeavors, if you especially like to see more content like this. So make sure you guys subscribe, join the Tengu Plant Discord, and tell Photoshooty that Karakuri deserved that slot on that competitive tab. And thank you so much for watching, guys, and make sure you guys have a great time going today.